welcome back to another episode of the Business Brain Dump podcast. I could not be more excited. I had to get very well rested. My skin had to look good because I have my own health and wellness coach with us today. And we are so honored to have you here because this is just, and we're not even going to be focused on health and wellness per se. We're going to talk all about how Chris was able to turn his passion into a thriving business. You guys are going to want to be somewhere where you can listen to every single aspect of this story. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the show, Chris. Great to have you here. And we
Great
had a bit of a pep talk before recording the podcast, and you've just got an incredible story, incredible background. So love for you to give yourself an intro and then give us a bit of background. We can dive in.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, thanks for having me. It's been a great experience working with Andrea. We met through another mutual friend in the real estate industry.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the fitness industry for close to 3 decades. Originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up playing hockey. That was my sport. That was sort of my intro into athletics and whatnot. And I think at an early age, I was sort of faced with 2 life-changing events that really put me on a trajectory towards the health and fitness space. At 16 years old, I was misdiagnosed with childhood leukemia. And fortunately, it was only for a couple of days. Some doctors had misread some blood work. But at that time, that moment, it was at 16 years old, being faced with mortality really scared me and really gave me a great appreciation for life and a hunger and a thirst for wanting to try to understand more about my body and about my health, and also put a little distrust in the health and medical space. So I figured at this point now, it's going to really be up to me to make sure I'm taking good care of myself and knowing what's going on. So that was a really critical moment initially that sort of woke me up to understanding the value of your health. Secondly, like I said, I played hockey. I played Division I college hockey at Quinnipiac University.
Which does not seem like taking care of yourself. That's a lot of blows and hits, Chris.
A lot. Yeah, absolutely. And I had quite an injury resume leading up to that. But going into my playing hockey in high school, you're playing against, 14 to 18, like teenagers, but when you make that transition to college, you're playing against guys who are a lot bigger and stronger. And so after my freshman year, I was about 165, 170 pounds, played right wing forward. I was getting bumped around quite a bit in my freshman year. So my coach came to me and said, listen, if you don't come back, with some more size and strength next year, you're probably not going to play. And that was threatening to my college career. And so encouraged me enough to want to go back that summer. I put on 30 pounds in 3 months, hit the weights first time ever, took supplements for the first time ever, took my nutrition very seriously. And so I learned that in that experience, how easy it is to manipulate your body just by applying the science and just being consistent with some strategies. And so those 2 events were really, I think, what gave me the hunger at that early time in my life for health and fitness, which then led down the road eventually to a passion in trying to dive in deeper and understand how the body works, physiologically, understanding training aspects and biomechanics, to then wanting to be able to dive in a little bit deeper into life development, personal development and growth from mindset standpoint. And so I moved out to Los Angeles from Boston. And in 2002, I made the transition. I decided I wanted to come out here and pursue an acting career. And so, of course, as an actor, you're doing some side jobs to try to make ends meet until you eventually get the big hit. I was in TV and film for about 12 years, which was a great run. I had a great time, but eventually saw this end of runway where I didn't think the career was going to go as I wanted, and decided to fully transition into a training business, which I was doing some training and some other jobs on the side to try to make ends meet.
Really quick, when you say it wasn't going where you wanted, because I think that's something that's also hard for an entrepreneur is to know, what was the goal? Was it that you wanted to be in a blockbuster hit? Was there a certain monetary amount? What was the not working?
Yeah, for me, I really took acting seriously. This is still back in the early 2000s when, you could come out to LA and potentially be a breakout star. You could get discovered. I was running around Hollywood. This is before the digital era. So I was running around Hollywood, handing out physical headshots and resumes and dropping off casting directors. And now it's all through thumbnails and online submissions. They're looking at images on a computer, but it was I was running and gunning. I'd show up at a 7-Eleven every Wednesday morning because there would be a a newspaper that would come out called Backstage West, where you could see like the listings for all these independent films that when you're not like a SAG actor, like you figure out ways to just do small student films or independent films to try to build your resume. So like I'd be in there highlighting, figuring out what roles I thought were right for me. And then I'd go around town and drop off resumes. I mean, I was like really and I really wanted to make this a career. Like I was really passionate about the craft of acting. So I really took it seriously and really wanted to have a career where I thought I could have like a leading role on a hit TV show or, you know, a lead role in a big blockbuster film. And I had some breaks, you know, and like you have to kind of work your way and pay your dues and work your way to get up there. You know, a lead role in a Lionsgate film. I had, you know, a bunch of like guest stars on different TV shows and did a bunch of commercial work, some print modeling and things of that nature. But, you know, 12 years of like making all these sacrifices, I was really gritty. Like I learned how to take no and just be extremely resilient and didn't let it affect me, was able to just kind of do the mundane day-to-day operations and handle it like a business to where like, you know, the no's were just falling off me. And I knew like every no was going to get me closer to a yes, you know, but it got to a point, 12 years, you make a lot of sacrifices, you know, before you know it. Like I'm in my mid 30s, like while I was struggling to try to make it in that career, like I had a lot of friends who weren't actors, which was by choice. Actors tend to be a bit self-indulgent. So like when you're struggling and you're around a bunch of struggling actors, you sit around and talk about like how you're not making it and how hard it is versus like I would be around a lot of my friends who were like, you know, really successful, you know, in different business careers. And so they were making lots of money and like traveling all around the world. And I was always the guy in the group that was kind of left back because I had to like work. Or like in the entertainment industry, there was a saying, the way you book a job is book a trip. So sure enough, you'd be dead with no work. And then the second you're like, well, I got nothing going on, let me just take off for a week. The second you book that trip, boom, you get a call. Hey man, you got a call back for this spot. Yeah, this job. And so it interferes. But so it just got to a point where I realized, you know, I'm just giving up so much of my life and there's so many other things I really want to do. And I had a real passion for wanting to help people with the knowledge that I was acquiring over the years in the health and fitness space. And I started to build up my health and wellness and coaching business slowly but surely, like towards the end of my acting career. And I was really seeing an acceleration there that was bringing me a lot of value. Like it was like feeding my soul to know that I was doing something different that was giving back to me. Acting only really gave back to me if I booked a job. Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really feeding my soul to a certain point. And what was interesting is I remember when I moved to LA, you know, the infamous question people always ask you is like, how long are you going to give it? And that would always piss me off because I didn't have a timeline. There was no like, well, I'm going to give it a couple of years. And if it doesn't work, like I just knew like I'm going to go after this and it's either going to hit or I'm just going to hit a point where something might just like resonate where I'm saying, it's time to go. It's time to try something else, move on to a new chapter. And so as I saw my health and coaching business starting to develop,
how'd you get your first client, you know, with that? Because that's a crazy transition. So you're trying to act, you've realized like, hey, I'm going to let go of acting, but you hadn't made that full leap. How did that come about? How did that passion start to transition into a business or clients?
Yeah, I was living in a small little 250 square foot apartment in Manhattan Beach, which is, if anybody's been to Manhattan Beach, California, you understand that, you know, there's $1 million homes all around that area. And so I was probably the most broke individual in Manhattan Beach, living in this small little, my friends, we nicknamed it the boat because it was just like this little 250 square foot rectangle strip that like I could give you a tour of my home in 5 seconds, from the bedroom to the living room to the kitchen to the bathroom. We're done. That's over. But it was a block off the ocean. It was my little oasis. It was amazing. And in the back of the house, there was about 500 square feet of space. And I asked the landlord if I could create a little outdoor training section to like build my business. And I wanted to start getting serious about that. So I took a $1,500 loan from a friend at the time who kindly helped me get my business off the ground. I went to Home Depot. I bought a bunch of material to build this like outdoor training facility and like bought some dumbbells and mats and bands and just like some basic stuff that I knew that I could get things going. But my premise at that time was health from the inside out. It wasn't come in here and just change your body with fancy equipment. It was more about changing people's mindsets and how they think of health and how they think of fitness, and driving awareness around habits and things that they were doing in their life that weren't facilitating health and fitness. So I knew if I could get people to start shifting that part of the foundation, that we'd start to see these physical transformations take off with the little that I had available to me in the backyard training facility.
You're like plywood weights.
Yeah,
You're like...
I mean, it was... You'd be blown away if you saw the outdoor. I called it the cage. It was like, because it felt just like gritty and rugged. It was like, you want to come to the cage and train. And so I started to just pick up, fortunately I'd been in this area of Manhattan Beach for a long time, and I was working at a couple like popular bars and restaurants. So I had a pretty good network of individuals that knew me and knew my background. So it was just one by one, like, word of mouth. I'd start with a couple clients. They'd come over to the cage and train, and 2-3 months in, they're getting great results. They're walking around. They're a walking billboard for me, talking to other people. Oh my God, you got to work with this guy. And so I saw the progression and the accumulation to the point where I thought, wow, I'm getting so much from this. Like, this is really like, it feels great that like I'm making a difference in the world with something that I'm putting a lot of energy and effort into. It's like I'm putting all this effort and energy into my acting career, and just it wasn't popping. Like I'm feeling like I'm, and also too, I saw the opportunity to really create a really nice living doing something that I really love.
So in the
you find something that you
beginning,
love, you never work a day in your life, right?
that's so true. So in the beginning, your clients were your billboards, and that's kind of how you got the start. Is that? So the funny thing is, I would say that is exactly how you get business today, because
1000%.
the way we were connected, I was at a conference, bumped into a friend, Phil Stringer, who everyone knows is who referred us and connected us. And I almost didn't recognize him. And it's not like, yes, he had lost a ton of weight, he toned up, but it was like everything about Phil, from the skin to his presence. Like, I adored him the first time I met him. He's just an amazing guy. He's phenomenal on stage. But I was like, Phil? Like, it took me a second, and I didn't realize why I didn't realize that it was him. And so as we were like messaging back and forth, I'd made a joke about the gym, and he made a joke about you, making him do sled sprints. And so we were just kind of talking. I'm like, oh, tell me about this guy. He was like, Andrea, it totally changed my life. And he sent me his pictures, his like the ones you make me do.
Oh yeah.
And he sent me that. And I was like, no shit, no wonder I didn't know who he was. Like, I mean, skin, body, like his posture, like everything about him was totally different. And so 100%, I'm like, I have to know this guy. Who is this? And after our first phone call, I was like, this is my guy. And so much about my lifestyle has changed. And you really are about the within. It's not like I came to you and said, give me abs. I want to look like Phil Stringer.
Yeah.
I was like, fix my gut, fix my energy, fix my fatigue. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm exhausted. I'm dead. And everything else is, no matter how hard. And I've always been into supplements. I've always been into training, but I couldn't connect the mind, body. And so I love that your OG beginning was exactly how you're getting business today.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, and thanks to Phil, because he's just, I mean, for making this introduction for us.
Yeah.
And he's introduced me to so many other amazing people that I've had the opportunity to work with. But he's just been a great advocate for the program. I mean, he's the epitome, I mean, he made an incredible transformation and continues to this day to keep building off of that. But that was a very intentional choice. My wife is my business partner.
I love that.
She's amazing. I mean, she's like, I love the fact that like my weaknesses are her strengths and vice versa. And so she's just an incredible sounding board in terms of how we choose to run the business. And one of the intentional choices that we really focus on is that we thought about social media, and we were thinking about, if social media went away tomorrow, like, would we still have a business? If we build our presence and rely on this platform, it puts us in an extremely vulnerable position. And it also doesn't allow us to focus on building what I think would be the core strengths of our messaging, right? Like, it's easy to just get on social media and pontificate, about like what we do and who we are. And like, we're on top of it, keeping with the trends, right? But there's something to be said, I think, about just being really quiet about your success and letting it speak for itself. And so, I really take my energy, instead of trying to pour my energy and efforts into creating content, I allocate all of that energy and resources towards pouring it into my clients directly. And, I don't encourage anybody to go out and talk about the business and promote for me and advertise for me. But just, I think by proxy, people are just out there living their best lives and being their best selves. And it's so infectious and it's so magnetic that people can't help but talk about it, because people are always stopping them and asking them, like, what's different? Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm seeing amazing change. And so, it just becomes part of the conversation naturally. And I think, we just saw a potential downfall of social media when TikTok got banned for 24 hours. And so that was exactly what we had sort of, been fearful of. And at that point, we were both looking at each other laughing, going, see, like, this is why we built the business the way we have. We're prepared for it. Like, if it goes away tomorrow, all my clients, I'm still going to operate my business the exact same way. I like to share content on social media, and like we have some stuff that we think is like relevant to share. But again, I really think about the structure of my business on a day-to-day basis and like where I allocate my energy and resources. And if I'm trying to think of content and sit in front of the camera for 2-3 hours a day, having to constantly create this funnel of marketing material, that's 3-4 hours less time that I can dedicate towards my clients, because when I'm not working directly with you, like on a call, on a coaching call or whatnot, I'm literally thinking of my clients and like what you're going through on a moment to moment basis, and like things that I might need to change or shift in your programming, or stuff that we discussed that I need to remind you about that you're not thinking of, that you might just get a text randomly throughout the day, like, hey, did you order those toe spacers? And you're like,
oh my God, I love toe spacers.
Right? So,
Brendan and I obsessed with toe spacers. Last night, Brendan's like, where are our toe spacers? Like, let me go get them.
But, it's important. Part of what I do, and you can attest to this, Andrew, is that, I've spent 30 years just like really, and I continue to keep learning and growing about all the things that we need to be thinking about if you want to be an individual of really great high level health and wellness. And so when clients come into me, their brains aren't programmed to think about these things, or their attention isn't focused on these certain areas. And so I really rely and take a huge responsibility on myself that when somebody comes into my program, through our early assessments and conversations, I understand exactly who you are, where you're at, what you're focused on, and I know where I need to fill in the gaps and be your brain in those areas for you until you start to learn how to pick up and adopt that way of thinking, acting, being, and doing. And it's like a handoff, right? So if I'm busy building content and doing all this work, I can't be that accessible and available and present for all of my clients that I work with, which is a lot. And so my brain is constantly like thinking in that manner, not thinking about like, what's this content that I can create that's going to get a ton of likes and clicks, and like, it doesn't operate that way.
And Jamie, you don't do a ton of social.
I'm just not on it as much, but something that I find really interesting. So I started following you, Chris, after we last spoke. I think it was like a week or so ago. And what I really like about your content is that it isn't just you, right? I think I've seen a lot of PTs and trainers, they make it all about themselves and like, look how jacked I am. Like, Chris, you're in amazing shape. And if you started posting that, you're going to get tons of likes. But all your content is like resharing people who are in that journey, going through that process. And I think that speaks volume about what you're providing to your clients. Is you're not just giving them the training, you're also giving them the support. You're cheering them on, you're sharing their content. They want to tag you in this content. So I see on Andrea's post all the time, Chris's tag, because she wants you to see and kind of validate that you are doing the work that Chris has told you to do.
Yeah, no, I love that, man.
I think it's a great strategy for building a business.
It's exciting. It's like my wife actually thought this was interesting too. She was like, having been in the entertainment industry, like I would have thought you would want to be in front of the camera more. You know? And honestly, like I think when I look back at my career in the entertainment industry, like from acting and TV and like modeling, I always hated doing modeling gigs because they were moments that you have to create versus like when I was doing TV and film, like the camera is capturing moments. Do you understand what I mean? There's a difference between like, okay, show me sexy. And then like, maybe I'm in like a sexy scene that the camera just happens to be catching. You know what I mean? So
you want
for
to
me,
feel it rather than putting it on. That's what
I'm not
you're
good at
saying.
like faking it. I'm not good at
Yeah.
like faking and like just trying to create it versus like I'm just being me. And if like that's good
Yeah.
enough and the camera catches it, great. But to be honest with you, like I really don't love like being in front of the camera in that setting to try to like just present something in a way versus
Yeah.
what I think is really more interesting is the clients who are showcasing their journey. I think, you know, you guys are the end result. Like you guys are the process and the journey, not me telling you about all these things that you could be doing. I want other people to see it. And so when, you know, I had a client who I've been fighting for the last 3 weeks to try to like get over, it was more of like a confidence building exercise that I wanted her to do and getting over fear. I have her doing these wall handstands and, you know, she was so afraid and she's like, I don't know if I can do it. I'm so afraid of falling. And I was like, trust
Jamie
me.
loves
Andrew,
handstands.
This
No, it's
isn't
not me.
Andrew.
But you know I won't do a handstand, Jamie. He made me do handstands. Jamie loves a handstand.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, listen, it's a challenging movement and it really was pushing her to do this. And so sure enough, I said, listen, I'm just going to load it up and whether you do it or not, we'll find out, right? Like we'll see what you decide in the moment while it's there. You're going to go through your workout, boom, 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 handstands. Like, what are you going to do? You got to go past it.
Break
You're
her
going to
neck.
check it off and get it down, right? So the next morning I wake up to an IG story tag and she's doing her handstands with a quote saying like the reason why you hire a coach is to help push you through these difficult moments when you don't believe in yourself. And you know, like put a tear in my eye, literally, like
I love that.
because I knew what this was going to do for her. And now she's like, look at this. She's like, how do we progress so I can do this off the wall and not use the wall? And like, I mean, it's just bringing up all of this confidence now that to me, it's not even about the handstand. It's like, I look at the limiting factors of how else is this showing up in your life in terms of lack of confidence and fear, other areas with business, relationships, etc. So, you know, and that again speaks to kind of like the foundation of when I started the business. It was identifying like what's holding you back from being your best self. It wasn't the 30 pounds or 40 pounds extra that you're carrying. It's what's been going on that led to that 30, 40 pound gain that we need to get underneath and really fix and work on some of those things. And so from a content standpoint, like those are the things that really fire me up the most is when I wake up in the morning and see these tags of people that are like overcoming obstacles and fears or challenges that they think they couldn't do. And then, you know, also I'm just Andrew can attest to this as well. I'm just such a detail oriented individual when it comes to like biomechanics and form and technique. Aside from the safety factor that you want to perform these exercises with great form and technique to protect yourself, it's also about how you execute the movement and hit the target that is intended for that exercise. And so when I see somebody who is been doing a like Bulgarian split squat wrong for years and they're hurting their back and their knees are hurting, but then I teach them the biomechanics and they've been practicing this week over week. And all of a sudden you wake up and see an IG story and it's just perfect form and they're just nailing it. It's just, you know, I'm constantly just cheering on the other side of the world with my clients because, you know, they don't always hear it, but I'm jumping for joy, like literally when I see these things because it's about practicing and perfecting and like learning how to like, you know, get to the target of what you're trying to go after. And I think that just crosses over in all areas in their lives, not just in the fitness component of it, but it levels up the disciplines and the skill sets that show up in other areas of their life. Like I said, with business and relationships, you know, relationships with your children.
But so something had to get you to this point. So we're in the cage. And you've got this little tiny area, this tiny apartment. You've got a couple of clients. Those are your walking billboards. So how long did you stay in the cage? Was it just smooth sailing from there? It just blew up?
No. So it was, I mean, it was a progression and I saw the potential within like the first 6 months. And so I said to myself, I'm going to give this a year. And if I can get to a financial goal that I felt would be satisfactory enough that I'd be willing to walk away from everything else that I'm doing and put all my attention on this goal. That was my main focus, you know? So I was literally trying to save like $20,000. Like that was the number at that time.
So
if I could save 20,000, I was still
working at the same
and
time.
bartending. I mean, I would wake up, like I said, I was living a block off the ocean. So like I'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning and train some people on the beach. It would be like dark out and I'm in the back of the cage with a floodlight, like training people at like the crack of dawn, you know, and then I'd sometimes cut out middle of the day and run up to Hollywood, which was an hour away for an audition, and then come back, train another client or two, and then go to the bar and work at night. I mean, it was.
You must have been
like,
exhausted.
I wasn't, because it was like, I was just so excited about everything that was going on. It was just like fun for me,
It was the supplements.
it was the supplements for sure. But I was excited about what I was building,
Yeah.
I was excited. I had a lot of
getting all
hope.
these emojis. What is going on?
Yeah. Celebration, man.
Some balloons.
Yeah, I was excited about everything that was happening. So to me, like, I wasn't fatigued. I wasn't burnt out.
Yeah.
Like, it was exciting. Like, I was building something. And that speaks to a quote from Will Smith that I heard once. He was talking about the entertainment industry. He was saying that hope is really powerful, and like, when he made it as an actor and his career took off, he's like, he didn't enjoy it as much. Like, life became more boring. Like, he wasn't filled with happiness and joy as much because he had everything. He felt happier when he was in the grind and the struggle because of all the hope that he had and the work that he was putting in. And so, I'm still really happy. My business has, grown and become successful. Like, I'm still really happy with where I'm at. But those are some really exciting times in the building phase of it all.
Yeah.
So it got to that point where literally 2 days before the goal date that I had to save that money, I had the money in the bank. 2 days before, it was 2 days before Christmas, actually, that year. And I said, great, I'm going home for Christmas back to Boston to see my family. And when I come back, I'm calling my agent, I'm calling the manager at the bar, and I'm quitting. I'm just letting go of everything. I'm going full time on my business. And so I came back home after Christmas. I made those calls. And about 3 months later, as the business continued to grow, I get a knock on my door. And it was my landlord with a tear in his eye. And he was holding up this letter that he had typed out to deliver to me to say that I have to cease operation of business in his backyard, because he's like, I thought when I was giving you this opportunity, I was so excited because I saw how excited you were, and I wanted to see you thrive. He's like, but it's so busy now. There's so many people coming on and off my property. He's like, even though you have insurance and I have homeowners insurance, like, what if somebody tripped and fell or got injured? Like, they might try to sue me and take my home. And I was just like, I didn't even think about that. So I gave myself a human moment, and I just like punched my pillow probably 20 times. And like, I think I probably did shed a few tears at that moment, because I was like, I just gave up everything for this. And like, now I feel like it's being taken away from me. And at the time too, you got to think, I had no overhead. I built this in my backyard. So there's no overhead.
And you just quit everything else. Like, you just went all in.
Everything else. I'm full on, right? So, I had a friend who was in the fitness industry, who worked with a lot of pro athletes at the time, and asked him, about a few options. And he said, look, there's an opening at this gym, that he was training at, which was amazing. It was this like private training facility that had beautiful locker rooms, and it was kind of like an underground training facility, like very like nondescript, like you didn't even know it was there. And so I went over and talked to the manager, and he said I could come in and start training there, but I went from zero overhead to $1,600 a month rent. And so that's a big jump. That wasn't like $500 a month. I mean, that was a huge jump, So in order for me to have the confidence to make that move, I thought I got to have more cash in the bank. And so I went to my 5 top clients and negotiated a deal to have them pay an annual membership up front at a discounted rate, so I could acquire enough capital that I felt would be comfortable enough to be able to make that transition. And fortunately was able to make that move. And within the first 6 months, I get a call from one of my top clients saying, you've got to meet this guy I'm about to send to you. And he sends me a picture of this guy with his shirt off, overweight. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, this guy is a high stakes poker player, and he just made a bet for $1.2 million with another poker player that he could get below 10% body fat in 6 months. And I said, well, what's he sitting at right now? He's like, he's 33% body fat. I said, well, let's have a conversation. So,
oh my God.
So we got on the phone, and I talked to this guy for about an hour, Christmas Eve, back in Boston the following year. And we negotiated a deal. And when I got back after Christmas that year, we got to work, and in 6 months, I got this guy to 8.8% body fat. We hit the goal. He won the bet, and it turned into this story. Like, some guy randomly happened to be friends with one of his friends, and the guy was a writer for the New York Post, and he caught wind of the story. And so the next thing you know, the story ends up on the New York Post. Good Morning America comes down and starts filming and films an episode with this guy.
Crazy.
And it went global. So at that point, that's when it started to kind of expand into like, some of the story expanded into like Asia and Europe and India. And so I started picking up clients that wanted to work with me from all over the world. And this was before there was online training. So I'm literally bootstrapping my business to work with clients remotely. I was filming video. I went in the gym and filmed for hours. All the exercises that you see today, like on the Trainerize app that we use, like I had filmed all those videos on my own and built a whole Dropbox folder. And so I would like text people their workouts with Dropbox links to their workouts. It was all structured in format. I have to go in and modify and change, but I was bootstrapping it before these apps even came out.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And that was how I really built the remote training business years before there was even conversations around like remote training or
which is awesome.
apps that allowed that opportunity. So then fast forward to COVID hit. And when COVID hit, all the trainers and coaches were forced to go online, but I already been doing this for years prior to. So for me, my business at the time COVID hit was probably like 60-40, like 40% remote, 60% in person. And so I was hoping, even before COVID, I was trying to move my business mostly remote because I knew it was an opportunity for me to scale the business faster, where I could bring in more clients and also offer more value of what I actually bring to my clients. Because the in-person training, while it can be great in some aspects, it's actually far less impactful because most clients, when they come in, they want to chop it up and just talk all the time. And so it can be hard when you're working with a client in person to try to get them to like, hey, come on, let's train. Like, all right, enough talking. Like, let's get back into the set. So before you know it, an hour workout really turns into like a 30-minute workout and not as impactful or effective as if I'm building your workout for you. You have accountability components that you got to check in for. And your goal is just get in, hit it hard, and get out with no distraction other than just being laser focused on your workout. So I knew the remote component to this would be way more effective if I had a scaling opportunity. Well, didn't know that COVID was going to be the thing that helped push it into fully remote and get us to that scalability. It was, and we were able to capitalize on it pretty quickly.
So how were you able to really get this back office running? So you mentioned your wife works with you. How large is your team? How many people do you have running all this?
It's just the two of us, literally.
That's crazy.
The two of us.
That's impressive.
How many clients do you have right now? Do you have like a direct head count or like?
A lot. Yeah. Close to over 50.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But it's in a way that I know where our thresholds are that allows me to be able to provide a high level of service to all of my clients. Right. I think I got a really great compliment, probably the best compliment I could have received from a client recently. He said that he's like, I know you have a lot of clients. He's like, but you always make me feel like I'm your only client. And that was like a massive compliment for me because I really pride myself and I'm really invested in each individual's personal journey. Like, I think just because I love the work that I do so much and I love the people that I have the opportunity to choose to work with, that like you could stop me in the street and if somebody said like, hey, what's going on with Andrea Coffrey? Like I could tell you right away and give you the full breakdown. Hey, what's going on with this individual? What's going on with that like I'm not lost on anyone. Like I know exactly where everybody is at in their journey. I know what changes and adjustments need to be made. Like it's just because I'm so passionate about each person that I'm working with, I'm able to maintain that. But my wife had a tech background. And so I am the least tech person you will ever come across. So when we met and she was seeing what I was doing, she was like, you're using Dropbox to like put these workouts together? She's like, you know, they have apps now, right? I was like, yeah. So she's like, so we should probably use that because it'll make your life so much easier. And I'm just like,
the app is amazing too.
I was still like, by the way, I'm still keeping track of my clients in like a notebook, like how many sessions they have. Oh, like, you know, like in a jail cell where you make like 4 lines and then 1 horizontal line to go through it. Like I was keeping track of clients. Like you got 5 more sessions left. I mean, she's like, what happens if you lose the notebook? I was like, I don't know. I guess I'm screwed. And she just kept bringing up more and more points that were like, I need to move you over to the digital world. And it's just the tech where it's just going to make your life easier and streamlined. There's going to be some growing pains making the transition. She's like, but I will help you. And so, you know, she moved everything over and helped me with the transition. And then she was like, and now we need to have a database of like your clients and how many sessions they have and when they're up and like when they're due. And, you know,
she took the business to another level. Yeah.
Did you jump into this like initially? Was this you guys met and you were like initially she was helping?
No.
Or it was just
she was working in the video space
Okay.
in tech. And so she got laid off from her job a few months after we met, which came as a big surprise to her. The company was like downsizing and making a bunch of changes. She got the rug pulled out from underneath her. And at that point, she was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. So she took a few months to kind of figure out like what move she was going to make. And during that time, it just sort of evolved. Like she started to like just get more interested in the business of what I was doing, like how I was doing it. And as she was coming up with ideas and like we would talk about strategies, we were like, why would you ever go back to work? Like if you can step in and offset all of this like administrative and like this business development side for me so that I can go 100% in on just focusing on my clients. Like I'm just on the front facing, like this is where I need to be. And you can just handle everything else from all of the bookkeeping and the databases and all of that. Like with new clients who onboard, we gift all of our new clients with the tools and resources that I want to help them be successful. So like I
You got
send
me
her
a
all the
stick.
addresses. Exactly. Right. Like we send out all the resources and she handles all of that. Aside from like, she's just the baller that holds down the household, which that's like a whole job in itself. But she just brought a lot of value to managing that whole other side, the operations of the business, so that I can just focus on my clients 100%. We were like, this is amazing. And so we saw the business starting to scale up because the more I can pour into my clients and not have to worry about all this other stuff, the more value I can bring, the faster I can get clients results. And so we were like, this is amazing. And we just took the opportunity and run with it.
That's brilliant.
Which is, Jamie, that's kind of your process now too, right? You're working more direct with your clients and you've got the back office. Is that accurate?
I mean, I think from my side, it's always been like, I started out doing everything. And then as I've hired more people, I'm kind of going like, what am I not good at? Who can I hire that can do a lot better job than I?
Yeah.
What I find fascinating about your story, Chris, firstly, like the amount of serendipity in your story, like finding a partner that's going to benefit your business, that is just crazy.
Amazing.
But also how you are still together.
Yeah.
I know personally, like through personal experiences, like working with family or working with spouses, something that I've tried avoiding. Like my girlfriend Sarah is amazing, incredibly talented in operations and marketing, and I've tried
she
to
does
be
our
like,
social media.
She does help with our social media, but for like my own business, I'm like, she would blow away our marketing and take it to another level. But I'm like, I cannot do that because when I come home and decompress and spend time with her, that's a kind of separation from my business. And hearing someone who's not part of my business give their input to some of the things that go on day to day is really insightful. But just how do you kind of keep that separation, or is it not really a problem with you and your wife?
I think we don't think of it as a separation. It's a full-on integration. I mean, I think we're blessed in the fact that like we're partners in life. We're best friends, we're business partners. We have so many things that we're aligned on in our lives that there's no distinction between anything.
It's got to be the supplements.
It's got to be.
Something in the water.
But not to say that we haven't had our challenges with it. I mean, we had to go through some bumps and bruises to like figure out like how to communicate with each other and how to speak to each other and how to like let down our egos in certain moments and find that balance, right? Like I learned how she does business. She knows how I do business. So like if there's something that we have to bring to the table in a discussion, like she knows how she needs to approach me and I know how I need to approach her, and I know how I need to listen and like we figured it out and we're not perfect with it. I mean, we still have, moments where it's like figuring it out, but I think because we both have the exact same goal and the exact same intentions and we're clear on that, it makes it easier for us to navigate conflict in the business. And it does, in that way, it doesn't really like carry over, like into the marriage or the personal life. And also too, like realizing that, hey, listen, if she's bringing a different idea to the table, like it's because she has an idea that she's trying to improve and make better for us. I may not agree with it, but there's a reason why. It's for the good. She has a good intention with it, and vice versa. Like if I'm bringing something different to the table that she doesn't agree with, it's not an ego challenge thing. It's more like, hey, look, like why is she seeing it this way, or why is he seeing it this way? I know he wants something good for the business, but let's really sit down and like break it down and see like what are the pros and cons, and let's just try to deal with the facts. Like let's not deal with opinion. Let's try to deal with
Emotion. That's the hard thing.
fact.
Yeah.
Separating the logic from emotion.
Well, there's a quote that says move with strategy, not emotion, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a key, it's a key reminder, you know, to move with strategy, not emotion, because how you feel about something could be very different than the actual facts of something and how it might play out, right?
I think I've had to grow. I would say my biggest struggle as a leader is I react, you know, it's a small company. There's a small group of us working together day in, day out. And it's hard. It blurs those lines of like, you know, my raw emotion, their raw emotion. And I think it takes certain personalities that play well together, you know, like I laugh.
I always be emotionless. That's the key.
You just got to be like,
yeah.
Well,
I tend to be more impulsive, and she tends to like sit back more and like really process and like think through.
Yeah.
You know,
it just sounds like you got a great balance between you. It's fascinating.
Again, like very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
You know,
wait,
I
Jamie, who's more emotional?
And like she tends to be a lot more like lighthearted and humorous. You know, like I could be very intense with like and try to go deep, and she's very like, it's all good. Like it's just lighthearted.
I feel like Sarah's that way with you guys. Like she's so bubbly and positive. You are too.
I mean, Sarah and I are very logical people. Like I don't think we've really had a fight because whenever we have something that we disagree on, we talk about it. And there's not really emotion there. It's very much like, how do we logically work through it? And people probably think we're very, very strange for that. But I think it's really healthy.
It's a great goal. Yeah. That's a great goal for people to strive for.
Brendan is so like calm.
Brendan's so chill.
I can't see.
No, never. And thank God, because I struggle with that. I'm so emotional. I'm so passionate. And you've probably,
I just also can't see that either, but.
Oh, I can.
I'm like, yeah. Jamie's like, yep, I see that. But I am so, and the problem is like, I want someone to get in that ring with me, and he refuses, which is the best thing ever. He's like, I don't see why you would see it that way. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it. And I'm like, well, I try to get a rise. He was like, yeah, you're not going to do that, are you? I'm like, well, apparently not. Fine, then I'll just go feel guilty now about being upset about that on top of being upset about that. So he has really helped me grow to different levels of maturity. He's just so calm. And, you know, my family is more emotional and he is more just calm and balanced. And that's kind of helped me grow. And my agent that's been with me the longest, Mason, he reminds me a lot of Brendan. He is just so steady Eddie, calm and cool and collected. Having him in the beginning as my first, you know, real employee was, at the time, I didn't realize how valuable that was because I mean, he was my learning board, and he's so calm. And I'm like, God, I should deliver that better with him. And he was like, that's okay. I understand where you're coming from, why you had to say it. And I'm like, you shouldn't be that nice about that,
Yeah.
So I think it's,
I don't think I've ever made a good business decision emotionally.
No.
I don't think you can.
No.
Yeah. You have to take a step back and really like process, it helps.
Yeah. So something that's on my mind, just going all the way back to the story, right from the start, from when you got started in hockey and got into fitness, putting on the weight to compete in hockey, your whole progress into acting. What I'm trying to work out is like, where does the entrepreneurial element start to kick in? Right. So when you were doing your acting career and you thought, I could take some people on and I could start training them up and I can start making some money from it. Were you doing anything prior to that where it was kind of like you were creating things that would make you money? Or in a way is part of that acting hustle culture that, having so many no's, that building a thick skin gave you the confidence to think, I could train people up and make money from that. I'll give that a try. Like, where did that kick in?
Honestly, like I've never really thought much about that, but as you're asking that question, I'm thinking about it now. And as far back as I can remember, even as a kid, okay, I grew up in a suburb of Boston. We had a farm right down the street from where I grew up, and we lived on a quiet street. And my neighbor had a garden. And I remember I would go over and steal vegetables out of their garden and set up like a little table out in front of our house and sell
I'm
on the
glad you're
side
not
of the
my
road,
neighbor.
like sell squash, sell
Amazing.
tomatoes,
I
sell
was going to ask if you
cucumbers.
started selling like a lemonade stand, but no,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
weird.
vegetable
Like I would
stand.
do stuff like I mean, I don't think I was like successful at it back then. I wasn't like crushing it like a little kid selling vegetables, but
But you
but
had
then
no overhead. It was your neighbor's vegetables.
that's
So
it. That's it. Just my parents' little fold-out poker table, you know. The next event that I can remember that comes to mind was when I was in college. Like I remember borrowing like a few $100s from my dad because in college we had like a spring break like festival at college, and I decided that it was a good idea to like go make these t-shirts and like walk around with a backpack and sell t-shirts. So my dad loaned me some money. I went and printed off a bunch of t-shirts and I sold a bunch and made some extra money and gave him his money back. And like I don't know where I developed it. Like my family's not entrepreneurial. My
Yeah.
dad was an export licensed consultant. My mom is a nurse, an ER nurse. Like, I really don't know where it came from other than maybe just the hunger
succeed.
to be
Yeah.
successful. I mean, it was,
That's something that I'm seeing here as well, right? Like when you were playing hockey and your coach is saying like if you don't put on 30 pounds, you're not going to be on the team anymore.
yeah,
Some people will just give up at that point.
yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not going to
Well,
bother
I
with
think
that. But
personally, for me,
you went for it.
I've always operated well with my back against the wall. And I think human nature, people operate really well in that position.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's true, Chris.
You
I
don't agree
think
with that?
most people crumble under pressure, and that's why they go to cozy comforts, or that's why they scale back, or, I think that a lot of people crumble.
Well, it depends, right? If it
Yeah.
depends, if I think the
Depends who
caveat
they
to
are.
that, is, do they like, fear is the underlying emotion of that, right?
Hmm.
If you allow that fear to be at the forefront versus being like on the underlayer, then yes, I agree. Those are the people that fold under pressure. But if you think about like people who have been dead broke and they fight their way out of the corner, underlying layer is like the fear, but it wasn't at the forefront. What was at the forefront was the vision of like what could be. So they
Hmm.
use that
Yeah.
fear as like the jet engine on the back of the rocket to drive them versus like the warhead at the front of the rocket that explodes and destroys itself. You
Yeah.
understand what I
It's
mean?
sink
Like,
or
I think,
swim. I
Yeah.
think some
yeah.
people are
So,
just sink or swim.
yeah, like the fear of not making it as an actor and like not
That
having a
pushed you.
career and like being dead broke. I mean, as an actor, I remember the phone call I made to my parents. I had nothing but the change in the ashtray of my car, and I was eating pretzels for a couple days to like survive. And I had to call my parents like in tears, like asking them for money because I had no money to eat. But I also loved like that struggling actor, like, and
Yeah.
I still was, even at that moment, I was like, but I'm still gonna make it. Like that big break is coming, But that
I love
fear is
it.
what like kept me auditioning and still working and figuring out what I needed to do to like try to make it. It wasn't the thing that I didn't crumble underneath that. And I would
Yeah.
just become resourceful and figure it out. So I do agree. It's like it's either or, but I think when the fear is the underlying layer, the hope is at the forefront. That's what can really drive people and where they really think do some of their best work in general.
One linear connection of success that you've had started for me from very early on when you were misdiagnosed. You knew
Mhm.
you needed to take care of your body and be healthy. You used that. You were a great athlete. You were told to be a great athlete, you need to be here. You used health and wellness to get here. You used health
Yeah.
and wellness I've seen your website. I've seen the health and wellness those are the shots. I mean, you ripped up like David and Goliath or something, like you're crazy. But again, health and wellness was getting you those bookings.
Mhm.
So it's not to me crazy that health and wellness is where you ended, because it's almost something that's transformed your life at every key
Well,
point in your
I
life.
really, I think I appreciate you acknowledging that. And I will tell
Yeah.
you, even to this day, right? Like most people think that like I'm able to stay in great shape at 48 years old because I've been doing this for so long, when in fact that the timeline has nothing to do with the fact of how I'm able to stay in great health and great shape. What drives me at this age, still to this day, after 30 years of doing this, to keep going after this and chasing this is my absolute fear of death. It is the one thing
Okay,
in
Brian
my life.
Johnson.
No, I mean, it really is. It genuinely is. I mean, I feel a strong connection to Brian Johnson's message because
Yeah.
of his Don't Die initiative. Like, I really appreciate that level of
Mhm.
pursuit. You know, I don't know where it stands and like what's possible, but like I appreciate that level of pursuit because I love life so much and I love the people around me and I love everything that life has to give. Death is the one thing in my life that I have not been able to like get comfortable with and make peace with. It's one thing that I greatly struggle with. And, you know, I don't talk about that a lot and I don't talk about that vulnerability, but it's not something that I can like wrap my mind around and get comfortable with. And so if there are things that I can do on a day-to-day basis that can increase my odds of not dying sooner at the demise of my own hands, then I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to pay attention to my food. I'm going to reduce my alcohol and drug consumption, like not mess around there because I did that plenty in my 20s and early 30s. If I can get better quality sleep because I know it's going to add value to my longevity, I can manage and control my stress and my environment, nurture relationships. There's certain supplements I can take, exercise and pushing my body, improving the way my body moves, maintaining really strong mobility. If there's things that I can do, to increase my chances of being around a lot longer with a better quality of life,
that's the key too.
I'm going to do whatever I can do. And that fear is what drives me every single day. Every single day. Not the fact that like I want to be shredded or huge or whatever it is. It's the fear of I don't want to die. Period. Like
I love that vulnerability because we're like we needed a little bit of vulnerability because you were just starting to get a little too, you know, you're a little too confident, a little too.
that is.
But I love that.
If you're looking for a massive weak point, that is my massive weak point for sure.
I love that.
I work on trying to get more comfortable with death and accepting and shifting perspective and how I perceive it and whatnot. But I'm also careful about not going too far with it because I know it's also a driving force of what keeps me where I'm at, you know, like on that tip of like driving hard. But I think more so if I actually do genuinely work hard on like I seek out the experts and people who talk on death and talk about, you know, that whole vantage point of like what it looks like in different angles and perceptions. And because especially like the Stoics, you know, and how they perceive it, because it's just something that I would love to just make more peace with because it can sometimes become a ruminating thought for me, but it's also a driving force for me, you know, for everything.
The crazy thing is with this, and I guess we have to kind of wrap this up, but we have asked Chris to come back for round 2 because initially when we wanted to have him on, we had a whole, because the reason I'm working with you, the reason most entrepreneurs are working with you is you've changed my life. Like, and I'm not saying that lightly. You've helped me be a better calm person. You've helped me just overcome a lot of my anxieties and fears too, just around positivity and feeling better and having the energy to like handle things better. So initially we wanted him to come on and talk to our BBD listeners about ways that they could combat stress, things they can do now, some of your tips and tricks for entrepreneurs. But when we had the initial call with him, we're like, this is too good. You're like
such a good story, Chris.
Yeah.
I had to dive into it.
It will help us for everyone to have this and hear this and kind of understand you and know your story. So part 2 is going to be really diving into what you do. Like we've talked about how you got here. Now it's like, what do you really do? I know people are going to be extremely excited to kind of pull back the curtain and hear about that. Cause I mean, it's a game changer, total game changer. And before we end, Jamie, will you tell him, one of our earlier episodes, we talked about kind of our New Year's resolutions. Tell him what your fitness resolution is really quick.
So my goal this year, and this is the 3rd time doing it, is to get a sub 90 minutes on a high rocks. Are you familiar with a high rocks?
Yeah. Have you hit it yet or no?
So this is my 3rd time doing it. So first time, 96 minutes. Second time, 110 minutes. That didn't go well. This year, 90 minutes in about 2 months. I'm going to smash it.
He's going to kill it.
I love it. Well, we're going to have to hold him accountable to that and, you know, figure out what he's doing to train and prep for that.
Ooh.
So
we can dive into all of that next time. So it's been amazing.
That's episode 3.
Episode 3. James, we're gonna fly out
there. Once it's put out there, then you gotta
commit.
It gets real.
Quit.
It gets real.
Oh, it's crazy. So I feel like we just scratched the surface. There's so much interesting topics in your background, Chris. Like amazing story on how you started your business. Amazing things that I think people can take away and apply into their own business, just about how you can start out with very little and validate your ideas and start scaling it from very light to working with your spouse as well. I think it's
amazing,
incredible and inspiring. So yeah, really appreciate having you on the show today, Chris, and excited for part 2.
Yeah, I appreciate
you
it too.
so
This was
much.
fun. Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
We
Excellent.
will.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks for listening.
That's it.
See you
Peace,
later.
community.
Bye.